There's Pamela. Hello, Pamela. Okay, do you want to do the land acknowledgement?
Sure. Are you asking Pamela or me?
No, I'm asking you. Just because I can't access it right now.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm just going to read this off of the Xchanges website. And I want to make sure I've got the right. Okay. We, the members and friends of Xchanges Gallery and Studios, are grateful for the opportunity to undertake and share our creative work on the unceded Coast Salish territories located in the traditional territories of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. As neighbors and friends, we work to create a culture in which the truth is spoken, concerns are acknowledged, and where we are united in a vision of our shared future. We acknowledge our traditional hosts and strive to honor them by sharing and nurturing an inclusive creative spirit through all of our activities and relationships.
And this artist talk is one of those. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, we have 10 people who are supposed to come today, so we'll see who's actually able to show up to our talk today. I'm Heidi
chronically late friends, so
of Xchanges Gallery and Studios, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here today to this artist talk with Elly Heise, who is our artist during Culture Days, who has been actually through the whole period of September 24th to October 24th, and today is the last day of Culture Days across Canada, where there has been literally thousands of events online and in person. And Elly also, I just want to acknowledge, is our very first solo digital artist as part of Xchanges Digital Shift. So congratulations, Elly. Elly was originally supposed to have a show in the gallery, a physical show in the gallery, and because of COVID and various problems related to COVID, we were not able to coordinate an exhibition for her, but we made the option for her to be a digital artist. So she is in fact our very first digital artist. I'm so proud of this fact. And we've already had a wonderful virtual opening at the beginning of the show. And we've also had some in-person collaboration and experimentation down at Willows Beach and other conversations online through this whole period and before. So this is the culmination of it. And Elly's going to take us through a presentation about her work and her influences. And then we're going to have some time to talk about the experimentation that we've been doing. And I also just want to let you know that this session is being recorded as well. You see the little icon in the top. So it's being recorded for later viewing. So if you do not want to have your video shared, you don't have to. It's always nice for people to share their video at the beginning for sure. And I see Shannon's coming in now. So people will probably be arriving as you start. And there you go. So I'll hand it over to you now, Elly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm in Manitoba time.
Yeah. Thank you for that wonderful
5:30.
greeting. Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for everything you've done. I also just want to say how grateful I am, all the work that you've done over the past month, and I know how busy you are, and before that, leading up to it, and your flexibility with coordinating this online show. Like you said, we were trying to do a physical show and kept having to reschedule because the restrictions kept changing. And then you had this brilliant idea of making it online. So I'm really grateful that you could work me in that way. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and we'll get, and can everyone hear me okay? Because it was skipping out a bit for me in the beginning there. So thumbs up all around. Good. Okay. Share screen. To do. Okay. Now, can everyone see this okay? Yes. Yep. Yes. Nods.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah, it looks good.
Good. Oh, good. And now I can see you. Good. Okay. Got everything. All right. So this is a presentation on the thoughts, resources, and experiences that inspired the show, Who Am I to You? And I just want to say a big thank you to CRD and is it the government of BC that's funding this as well, Heidi?
Yes, the government of British Columbia. Yes, for sure.
So yeah, thank you for that. Oh, and one more thing before I continue. If you haven't had a chance to view the show yet, check out xchangesgallery.org. Now, I'm a big fan of letting people know what I'm going to be showing. So then you have an idea of a time frame and what's going to be shared. So first in the outline, I'm going to talk about artists and thinkers, one thinker that inspired my artistic practice and this show. And then we're going to explore some earlier and new artworks. I really liked the idea of this outline that Heidi suggested, because it's nice to see how people got to where their thought process was for a show. And then at the end, there'll be an open Q&A/discussion. So if you have any thoughts or questions, yeah, feel free to jot them down throughout the presentation, and I'd love to talk about it with you after. Some reasons here. Okay, so these are the three main inspirations. I would like to say that there was a lot more, but it would have turned into this big fan talk instead of an artist talk. So there are so many artists and people that have inspired me, but these, I guess, were my top three. The first is Véronique Leperrier M. Then there's Oliver Sacks and Noémie Goodall, and I'll take you through each of them. And please excuse my pronunciation in advance. So Véronique Leperrier M, she's a multidisciplinary visual artist based in Quebec, and she's also part of a Society of Effective Archives, it's called. And they are really interested in looking at memory as a living presence. And I will talk a bit about my past archival work. That's when I first started looking at her, because she was looking at memory in the past as a living, breathing thing. The core of her practice, as you can see, is drawing. And she's interested in looking at these human relationships to time, history, and mythology. But her work isn't rooted in the past. As you can see by these drawings here, she makes it really relatable, I think, by communicating this sort of moment of transformation. She talks about metamorphosis a lot, and I think that comes through a lot in her work. You know, there's this figure that's looks like it's either turning into flies or is becoming a person from them, you know, and this floating carpet here, it also has this organic material, these trees seeping through it. So she's always getting that moment of transformation. And I think that's what really makes the idea of memory just living and breathable. This is Oliver Sacks. He is a British neurologist. He's also, he passed away in 2019. He was also a naturalist, historian of science, and a writer. He published many written works throughout his life, including a book called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat and Other Clinical Tales. And he changed the names of his patients for these books, but it is about his patients that he's treated and helped. And in this book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, he discusses the difference between the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. And the point of interest for me was how the right part is far less understood. And there's a lot of right hemisphere syndromes that we haven't been able to treat because there's just so much that we don't know about it. And what I really admired about Sacks was how he called for a new type of research in efforts to understand it, these conditions where imagination, art, and science can intersect. And, you know, it's sometimes quite rare, you know, some of these thinkers 20 years ago calling for more art to be a part of valid research forms. So I had to admire him for that alone. And he described art as a grounding and connecting point for a lot of his patients. It was a means of communication for a lot of them, as well as a purpose, gave them a purpose to make art. So he really showed how valid and important art is for mental well-being. And I didn't realize at the time that that's what I liked about him. I just knew I was really drawn to him. And I will talk a bit more about him within the context of my practice later, and how he continued to inspire me later on, and still does. This is Noémie Goudal. I'm not totally sure if that's how you pronounce it. She's a French visual artist living and working in Paris. She works in multiple mediums, but is best known for her photo constructions. She actually builds objects in real life and photographs them in the real world, in the real space. And she really blurs that line between photography and installation, melds them together in this really successful way. One thing that really draws me to her work is how successfully she manages to communicate this idea of being fragmented or disjointed, but at the same time whole. As you can see on the image on the right, I feel like that was really illustrative of that. And we're both really interested in human relationships with space, and we both want to show a space that's somewhere between the physical and the imaginative, which you'll see in some of the images I'll share with you of some textile installations I've made, that she really served as an inspiration for continuing to do that. So now I'll talk a bit about my earlier artworks. This was really a great learning experience for me, putting together this presentation, which I think maybe part of why this outline is suggested to artists to really help them figure out what they're doing. So I was trying to find, the common thread between all my different explorations throughout school and when I first started making art. And for me, that common thread was self-awareness was the word that just kept coming up. Yeah, it was the most consistent thing that was explored. And I did that mostly through experimental portraiture. This was, when I say experimental portraiture, human subjects, both found, staged, and digitally manipulated, and later on even physically manipulated. Okay, so this is some of my earlier work, and it's quite a bit different than what I'm doing now, but I think it's important to talk about. So for a few years, I was obsessively working with archives, and I was interested in exploring that connection between, I felt like there was a connection between memory and self-awareness. And it took a while for me to realize that I was looking at how memory can either ground or unsettle your sense of self. Because I was too close to it. I was looking at my own archives, and yeah, it was a little bit, I had no distance from it. I was a little bit obsessed, I guess. And it wasn't until I came across Oliver Sacks, and he helped me. He described the need for memory as a need for identity. And I realized, because I was constantly centering these mostly female figures, and they were actually extensions of myself. And I was looking for a grounding through my practice. So I realized I should, as much as I enjoyed doing that, it was time to move on after a few years. So I wanted to, instead of being just totally rooted in nostalgia and in the past, I wanted to make the photograph less static, less associated with a past object. So I started making these installations where I printed images onto chiffon, and it moves and breathes. You can see in the video on, I think I will share a little clip in this presentation, but if you want to see more, if you go to the digital exhibition on xchangesgallery.org, you can really see how this chiffon moves.
I put the link in the chat for people as well.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. Yeah, so it's really it's activated by the air in the room, the vents, but it's also really activated by the viewer moving around it. It'll shudder in response to your movement. But it cannot be accessed physically. You know, it looks like a living, breathing space, but you can't go into it. And this medium really spoke to me about what a memory or a mental wandering may look like, the space between the physical and the imaginative, as I talked about with Goodall. So it's this sort of ephemeral, abstract, changeable sort of thing. So that really helped me bring photography into more of a living, associate it more with a living, breathing being. Yeah. Okay, so before I talk about the show, I wanted to bring up one more series. This is a pretty big jump. It's called the Steeping series, and it is ongoing. I just started it in 2020. And I made it while I was in residence in Switzerland, and I'm still working on it. I thought these images I made were important for me because I was visually learning how to connect self-awareness, nature, and the body together, and consider these various effects that they can have on mental health. I think the pandemic really shifted my purpose. I really started to discover that, you know, I kind of noticed it a bit with Oliver Sacks, but I realized that that could be a real purpose for my work, is to focus on mental well-being. So I really started to explore that more with this series. I started using my own body x-rays, or my own physical body, or these, if I did use a model, it was almost like they really understood what was going on. So they were like an extension of myself almost, and really integrating it into nature, really steeping it into nature. Okay, so the show. I was really excited. I am really excited about this show because I felt like I could bring together all these various trajectories that I talked about in my earlier practice into one cohesive show, and include drawing, which I didn't have the chance to show. There's not enough time for me to show some earlier drawings, but I'm more happy with these ones anyway. So, and because I want to mention, because of the pandemic and Heidi's wonderful ideas, we were able to actually add some virtual facets to it as well. So there's physical installation, and then there's the physical works, but there's all these virtual facets, which I will mention at the end of this, how you can check some of those out. This is also the first show where, instead of looking at the archive, I was looking at memories through the vein of myth. And folklore from my own heritage. And I'm really interested in doing a lot more of that in the future. One more thing I'd like to say before I get into the ideas that are explored here is that I am not a professional therapist or some sort of mental health expert. This is just bits and pieces of what I've learned from my own research and own experiences, which in turn inspired the show. Okay. So this is Homebound. This is the earliest artwork. Well, it's from 2020, so it's pretty recent, but the earliest work in this show. It's the only one that's been in another show, and that was as a physical installation at the end of my residency in Switzerland. So there's a lot of different formats that this artwork is taking. It's going to be a GIF, and I will talk about that at the end. It's also part of this augmented reality. It's been an installation. It's also a print that you can buy, and I'll talk about that at the end. But yeah, it's taken on a lot of formats, which is great because it feels like it's really living, and keeps changing in unexpected ways. So the original inspiration was that this was really just supposed to be illustrative of dissociating while simultaneously trying to connect with nature and with oneself. So it's showing that dissonance but coexisting with that. I titled it during the pandemic and I called it Homebound because I feel like it kind of, my interpretation of it changed because of our situation of being in a lockdown. And it kind of, people associated it with that social isolation. People really connected with it that way. So it did change a bit with that. So yeah, as we in these times keep changing, I feel like this artwork does too, both in how we interpret, because we can, I can't read my handwriting, how we interpret it and the many formats it can change into. Okay, this one is called Good Migrations. And it's about finding self-awareness both in nature and myth. I wanted to bring those two ideas together. I'm really inspired by this book. It's by Karen Armstrong, and it's called A Short History of Myth. I haven't finished reading it yet, but what I've read so far is, was definitely drove me to make this kind of work. In the introduction, she talks about how there's this loss of myth. Myth isn't as culturally relevant as it used to be. And how subsequently that leads to a loss of a sense of self and an understanding and a direction, like a sort of code for people to live by. And she talks about what a myth really is and how it's not supposed to die out or be this thing of the past. It's supposed to change and keep up with how the culture changes. So the way it's depicted is supposed to actually change with time, or our association with it is supposed to change based on what we as a society think we need. So this is a very contemporary take on a folkloric creature from Norwegian culture called the huldra. She was actually originally a forest sort of vixen, and more commonly, you know, when you talk about her, she's just known as this creature that if men came out of the forest crazy, they would say it was because of her, that she would just drive men insane. She was supposed to be very beautiful in the front and very hideous in the back. And when I actually read and learned more about her, it's not true. Actually, what she's based on your treatment of her depended on how she treated you. So she could actually guide people to out of the forest or to good fishing spots. She could be very kind. Or if you were bad to her, then she would, you know, make you go crazy. So I was thinking about that and how that idea, you know, the lesson from that is still relevant. Our relationship with ourselves and with nature really depends on how we treat it. It depends on our relationship with it. So I really wanted to completely reevaluate it. I threw out the idea of a forest vixen and instead made a creature that was completely immersed and covered in nature. Because this nature and myth immersion gave me a sense of grounding and well-being that allowed me to kind of get on with my life. So that's why it's called Good Migrations. Permeate, again, is a similar kind of exploration as what I just talked about. Completely redefining and changing that myth. Also, it allowed it to gain more relevance across various cultures, having this loose sort of interpretation with it. As I've shown people this character, I've consistently gotten feedback, oh yeah, there's something like that that comes from my culture as well. So it was nice to hear that it could be relatable even if you don't have that particular history. Can
I ask you a question, Ellie?
Yeah,
the
sure.
Hudra, how do you spell that, Hudra?
Oh, it's Huldra. But it could also be spelled in plural Hulder.
Hulder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just putting little notes in the chat for people,
yeah,
as we go along.
Thank you very much for doing that. And please let me know if there's any questions popping up, because I don't have the chat open at the moment. So feel free to interrupt. Where was I? Oh yeah, so I want to take a moment to talk about the hand gestures in this work, because this came up when we had the virtual opening. So I thought I should probably talk about it here. So these hand gestures, particularly the right one, they mean various things across different beliefs. The right figure's hand, in ancient Greek and Roman times, if a speaker had something very important to say, they would do this gesture. In Christianity, it's simply a blessing to the viewer of the image. In Buddhism, it's an actual exercise, it's an actual teaching. It's a root mudra to achieve grounding. And that really hooked me in, because a lot of my work is about trying to achieve that grounding. And it's a physical exercise that you do that's supposed to help ground and calm you. The left hand, that was simply inspired by this Italian Renaissance painting by Raphael called School of Athens, where Plato is pointing up for knowledge and Aristotle is motioning downwards to the ground. And so I just wanted to suggest this potential healing from a nature, and again, recontextualize past art and works to make them relevant to what I believe we need now.
Did you say by Aristotle?
Aristotle and Plato, but it's the artworks by Raphael.
Raphael, but it's Aristotle's pointing towards below and the others above.
Plato's pointing up. Yeah. So it's them staying centered, and you've probably, I'm sure,
I remember it.
yeah. Okay, so rooted it's the same sort of thing. It's the same grounding, that same hand gesture, simply just vertical up. And there is also a subtle reference to stigmata, where the wounds are appearing in the same place where nails were driven into Jesus's hands. But there is the stigmata, which is it's like a phenomenon that people apparently experience, where only the person can see it. And I was thinking about how that's interesting. It made me think of invisible illnesses, and how, you can't necessarily like see how someone is suffering or what they're going through. So the whole, it's also, I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but it's a potential to plant something and grow from that suffering and learn something. My chronic illnesses have taught me empathy. So I just was thinking a lot about that. And then the roots are simply a visual mimicry of veins. And that's kind of confirming that relationship of body and nature, and that you're meant to be here.
There's an aspect of that one too, sorry, just to go back,
Sure.
with the fingers, like wrapping around the fingers, is that it's sort of ring-like, but also a bit snake-like on the third finger there.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, are they rings or are they organic material?
It's, I wonder if I can zoom in. It is organic material. Oh, but it's not showing up very high resolution right now.
No, but it does look a little snake-like, but it's also,
yeah.
No,
a lot of my work, it's not just like, I don't know if you saw the earlier steeping series, there's the roots that are going into the person's back. And it's because there's also trauma that's like how do I talk about this without being too personal? That there you can have trauma that's associated with nature and certain things, and I'm just sort of highlighting it and looking at those various mental states in nature. I'm not trying to tell anyone what to think or anything. I'm just sort of, I mean, I am hoping that people will experience well-being looking at my work, or a sense that someone understands. But those are photographs of ferns that are wrapping around the hand. And I was looking at
Right.
that integration and the nature seeping through. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, and those roots too, you know, as you were saying, as a visual mimicry of veins, you've just now made me also think of the network of nerves and tendons, and you know, everything through our body is almost root-like that way.
Yeah, it really is.
Blood vessels and such.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and just how I think sometimes a lot of people experience, anxiety, and for a lot of reasons, but there's a lot more anxiety with like when people were in a lockdown and they weren't outside and they weren't connected with
Yeah.
nature, and there was a sort of disconnect.
Mhm.
So, when I was going into nature, I completely wanted to immerse and comb myself in it. And so I kind of want to highlight how interconnected we are and how originally we are a part of the ecosystem. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so these are my cloud minis, I call them. The one on the left is called Expected Cloud Cover, and the one on the right is called With a Chance of Skies Falling In. So these works are an attempt to look at fear and anxiety from a more objective distance. Much in the same way, like you can't control the weather, you can't control a condition you have. You can cope, and there's exercises you can do. But one thing that helps is also a bit of a distance, looking at this thing that you can't change, and an acceptance, sort of like, oh, an anxiety attack's coming on. It's like, oh, it's going to rain later. So it takes off the burden off of your shoulders that this is your fault or something like that. So that's what I was exploring and playing with these two works. Okay, I put these two works together, and the same I should have mentioned with the last two, they're not diptychs, they're just similar, and they explore a similar idea. So I'm doing that with these two. The one on the left is called Oculus, the one on the right is called Mind Float, and they're both X-rays. The one on the left is a retinal X-ray. The one on the right is a X-ray of, it's like some kind of fascia that goes around your brain. I'm not sure what it's called. But yeah, I was using these X-rays to further highlight how intertwined body and environment can be. I was also drawing attention to how we perceive by referencing the moon and the eye, or this sort of, or a sun or a cloud, or that sort of gaze in the sky. I wanted to choose a calming and centered composition. That's something that I still kind of carried forward from the archival work, is these centered compositions, in attempt to look at these things, but also have grounding, because the centeredness is presence. Okay, where skies meet. This is my pride and joy that I hope will be physically shown somewhere someday, but I'm really happy that we could do a video and everything, and I will show a clip of that. This work was important because I really wanted to give the viewer control to interpret layers and find that unity and centeredness, but on their terms, instead of just presenting it as a centered thing. And again, this is similar to how Noemi Goodall shows layers, but also unites imagery. So these exist as 3 separate pieces with 2 layers of fabric per piece. It's the same image printed twice per piece. So when it moves, it really gives a sense of a 3-dimensional sort of little sky in a frame. And people can seek out the center of mind, body, and space as they see fit. I also wanted to bring about dialogue about the power of perception, how this work can change based on where you're standing, and really activate the viewer and give them a chance to talk about that. I think I've got a video clip here. I hope it loads. Can
Make
everyone
sure
see
you
that?
share the audio.
I don't have the audio on this clip.
Oh, you don't, it's just
I thought it
silent?
might
Okay.
interfere, so it's just, I took it off for this.
Okay.
But it's just a short little, I don't know, 30 seconds or something like that, just so you can see how the fabric shudders and moves as I move around it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you can see, but it really, because of the way I hung the images in the frame, it really does look like one sky, but when it moves, it kind of creates this like, oh, is that, can I go in that space? Or
Mm-hmm.
at least that's the feeling I get.
I love that because it's like the presence of the wind. You're suddenly conscious of the fact that wind is there, wind would be there. And if you just looked at the static image, you wouldn't see that, you wouldn't perceive it.
Yeah. And there's a bit about that and quite a bit more at the video. So please check it out on xchangesgallery.org. I do have a voiceover there that talks about all the ideas in this. But for the interest of time, I can't show that whole video. So so the last thing I want to talk about, are these moving for people? Because they should. Okay, good. So I just got approved as an artist on Giphy, sorry. GIPHY. So you can actually search for my GIFs on text messaging, Instagram, or the Giphy website, or any other app that supports GIFs. So please feel free to add my GIFs to your Insta stories or send them to people. This was my way of trying to bring the show to you, so you can actually use it and utilize it in a space. I love these ones. These ones are on Instagram. And I would love it if you could, yeah, and if you could send them to, if you post, let me know, and then I'll share it as well. So yeah, let's be friends on Instagram and share GIFs.
I like what you've done with this, Elly, too, because as we talked at the virtual opening, a lot of your work has a gentle sense of humor and a very sensitive and kind sense of humor too. You know, thinking of a chance of rain, you know, that reminder to be mindful that yes, we could have a chance of rain, but it's actually a beautiful image. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom, right?
Yeah.
And so I like that. And I like your transformation of the Huldra as well, who is, this works great for her.
Yeah, it's just bouncy and fun, you know?
Yeah, she's been made out to be this evil creature, but in fact, you know, she could be your friend and help you as well.
Really, she's almost a mimicry of yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, bouncing up and down.
Yeah. And then I did make a Halloween one. If people want to share that. And these artworks, just Homebound is available right now, but all the works will be available on sweetpeagallery.ca. And I completely understand that times are tough, and like I can't afford an artwork right now, but we will be selling merchandise as well, so stickers and things like that. So if you know someone that wants to get some of that stuff, please send them to Sweet Pea. And thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts now.
I was wondering if you might share the augmented reality, the little video clips that we created at Willows.
Do you have those on you?
Those are on your messenger. They're on your messenger. For some reason right here, I just can't get my internet going properly. My Zoom's working fine, but I can't get anything to open on my Chrome.
The thing is I can't access my Facebook Messenger. I don't know if you remember, we chatted about how I can get a preview, but I can't actually click on it because I don't have Messenger technically.
Okay, sorry,
No,
I'll
it's
try
totally
again.
fine.
I'll try
But
again
if
on my
you
thing
email
here.
it to me or something, I could do that.
Yeah, I don't think I can do that. Looks like it's not wanting to open anything for me. We had like a power outage here the other day.
Yeah.
And ever since we had the power outage, we've had problems with getting certain things up on the internet.
Wi-Fi has been tricky, yeah.
Mm.
But did you want to take a minute to talk about how it is available? So Heidi has Adobe Aero. So for those Apple users, I think they're published, right? Like, because I
Yes.
think was it Pam who was able to?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was Pam actually.
Yeah.
We did it at her house.
Yeah, so I
Let's see
wasn't
if I can
there,
get it on
but
my
I think if you just search, do you search for Xchanges or my name, or Pam's bringing it up. But yeah, if you wanted to, this app allows you to put the artwork into an augmented reality, so you can find it at locations, and that's what Heidi and I were doing at Willows Beach. If you're an Android user, I published some artworks on Pixemotion, it's called. Maybe I should write this down in the comments. Pixemotion for Android.
I'm gonna see if I can find it on my phone.
Program for Mac, for iPad or Apple users. So this
I can. Okay.
So these two apps that I just typed into the chat, you can actually download that, and I think just message Xchanges or myself, and probably Xchanges for the Arrow, and they can send you a link and you can experience the artwork in augmented reality. Yes. Pam has it on her screen right now.
Oh, okay.
If everyone could take a look, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I have trouble even on the phone here. I'm having issues. Such a pain. We were so excited about this. Thank you for showing that, Pam. Let's just spotlight Pam.
That's very helpful.
I'll just try it again.
If you stop sharing your screen, for a second, Ellie, then we can fill Pam's video. There we go.
Okay. Oops, where am I?
There it is. So just to explain, so what we did was we took the image and we actually projected it at Willows in between the trees there, so that just like those earlier images that she created in the forest in Switzerland, we kind of recreated it, but you could only see it on your phone or an iPad. Then I went over to Pam's house and we did it on her porch.
Yeah.
So literally we were looking at the iPad and suddenly the image appeared and filled the window there, which was really great because we were homebound too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just the idea of bringing the artwork to someone's home, wherever in the world they may be.
Mm-hmm. Or yeah, and outside or inside. You can do it outside or inside, and it's just a different way of interacting with it. It's hard to explain unless you actually do it. The other thing we did while Pam's looking for that, oh, there it is. And I'm not sure if you can see her deck there. You can see her deck. So it actually filled the doors, the French doors. And suddenly it was there. It was cool. I liked it. We were having a good time with that.
Yeah, I do have a video on my phone as well. I wish I'd sent it to myself, but I'll try to do so now. I don't know if you want to take a second to talk about how people can access that, Heidi.
Yeah, I think, what did we do now? I think it's going to be on your, it has to be on your web page. I think it's on your artist's page.
On Xchanges.
Sorry, I would put the, yeah, at Xchanges.
Perfect.
The other thing that we did when we were at Willows was we played around with an app that I learned from two other artists I work with. I did a residency earlier in the year through Ase Proyecto in Buenos Aires, and I met these other two artists from the UK who introduced me to this very interesting mapping tool called What 3 Words. And if you look that up, what it does is it has remapped the whole globe in 1 meter squares, and each 1 meter square has 3 words that uniquely identify it. So if you were lost in a boat, for example, out in the middle of the Pacific somewhere, they would actually be able to find you. Now, you'd have to have an internet connection, which is possible, but they could literally pinpoint your location by these 3 words. So even where you're sitting right now in your chair or your table, there's 3 words that actually define this 1 meter square that you're sitting in. So it's pretty neat. So we used that quite a bit too, and came up with some fun words.
All right, I'm just uploading a few files to my Dropbox so I can share my screen. It might take a minute though.
Does anybody have any questions or any reflections? Yeah. So where I am right now, my 3 words are greatly change lozenges.
Oh, that's cute.
And I saved the location at Willows Beach, and our word where we did the augmented reality, the 3 words were cute, still, breathed. So if you take those 3 words, cute, still, breathed, in the app to Willows Beach, you will find exactly where we stood.
Yeah.
And you can stand exactly where we stood.
And it's apparently more accurate than, was that Google Maps or something?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
So you can tell
it works with Google. It works with Google, but it's more refined. That's definitely. The funny thing, when I did my residency, I did some work at Matheson Lake with these other 2 artists. They were documenting water bodies in their areas in the UK. And my 3 words for one of the locations where I was residences, paradox, and chimed. And I thought that was funny because I was doing a residency.
I love that.
So there you go.
So Elly, did you have some plans to actually situate your work in specific places or and send people to those places to view it? Was that something that is that something that's planned in the future?
That was the original plan. The problem that we had was finding an Android friendly app that would do that, because that's what I'm on. So we instead decided to, with Arrow and with Pixemotion, people can just put it wherever they happen to be. I do really like that idea and would be open to something like that in the future, if I meet someone really tech savvy who can help me with that. But for now, I think it works out quite nicely as well because, everyone's everywhere right now. So at least we can get the artwork to them in their space, either through augmented reality or through a GIF. So it's more accessible at least. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, by the way. I never had the chance to reach out and say thank you for getting the Arrow app and taking that video.
Oh, it was quite a lot of fun actually. So yeah, I was just thinking that if people could find it other places, it would be pretty exciting, I think.
Yeah. And that's definitely something I'm open to. I mean, what I really enjoyed about the installation in Switzerland was that it was something that you're walking in a forest and you come up to and it's existing there. I love the idea of doing that and getting people outside because that's part of what I'm interested in is that nature aspect, right? So I think, having it like a treasure hunt and helping people interact that way, it's definitely something that I would like to do. Yes.
Was that installation in Switzerland, was it printed on chiffon as well? Did it look like
Oh.
in the photo maybe it was a bit see-through, or?
I'm so glad you asked that because I forgot to mention that. Thank you, Austin. It's actually printed on a transparent vinyl. The chiffon doesn't stand up well to the elements. So the vinyl though worked really well, and this was just what the team, it was with Versaska Photo Festival, and that's what they suggested to print it on. I was really lucky that, you know, they handled all of that stuff. And it stood up way better to the elements. It was actually up from September 5th to, I think it was like October or November or something, like end of October, early November, and it was still fine. So yeah.
It strikes me that a lot of this work you're presenting is like from the installation in Switzerland to your the three images, the sky images that were printed on chiffon. They are images that sort of relate and interact with the real world around it through their kind of transparency, and you get to kind of see through them, and so in that way they do relate to kind of their specific installation. And then with these kind of with your ability to look at the Switzerland installation through Aero, you're also getting that kind of this image relating to the specific context wherever you are.
Such a lovely way of putting it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about when I was looking at a lot of these sort of photo installations or virtual installations as well. And I'm wondering, like, do you think, like, to me, it seems like it does have a relationship to memory and myth, as memory and myth might relate to the real spaces that we inhabit as people every day. It's kind of there,
Yeah,
but intermediated through our minds, or however you want, you know, it's not exactly there, you know, in reality. But
no, I think that's spot on, Austin. Like this I think it speaks a lot to people's mental states, how it goes from being not there and then there, this either mental wandering or this dissociating or daydreaming, and then being brought back to physicality. But with the artwork, there's kind of a coexistence of both. And hopefully showing both can show this potential for presence, and in a positive sort of way for the viewer. That isn't horrifying or, you know, like the world.
The work does, it has like an interestingly dreamlike quality, but it's nice. It's like a calming dream.
Thank you. It's so nice to hear you say that, because I'm such a big fan of your artwork. So thank you.
I'm a fan of your artwork as well.
I'm blushing over here. Just sip my coffee.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're coming up to the end of the hour. So I'd just like to say thank you so much, Elly, for a wonderful presentation and a really, really great, strong body of work. It's been a lot of fun working with you. And I'm really looking forward to doing more work in the future as well, and seeing what's coming around the corner. And as this work evolves, I mean, this isn't over. This work I see going on, and it's just really, it's great. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all for coming out. We really appreciate you coming out for the talk, and hope you can engage with us again.
Thank you so much, everyone. Your support means a lot to me. Please reach out to me either via email or Instagram. I'd love to keep in touch and discuss with you, and know more about you. So thank you for coming, and feel free to reach out to me. I'm friendly.
Thanks so much, Ellie. It was really
Thanks,
interesting.
Pamela.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Constance. Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, Austin.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk soon.
Thanks so much,
Bye.
Heidi. Bye.
Bye.